Hello and welcome to Overcome a Mental Health Podcast. I'm your host, Travis White. This is a place where you can share your mental health stories. I'm very excited for tonight's guest. I'm speaking with Nita Sweeney. Nita is a best-selling author, mindfulness coach, mental health advocate, marathoner, and dog mom. Sorry, all that was like a tongue twister to me. But
It's a mouthful.
welcome to the show.
Thank you, Travis. I'm really excited to be here.
I think we're going to have a great conversation. And without wasting any time, I'm just going to turn the microphone over to you and have you tell us about your journey.
Well, it started a long time ago. I'm not young-ish anymore, and I probably always had depression. I know I always had anxiety. I was always kind of a melancholy kid, and I didn't realize how much it was impacting me until I had made my way through college and was actually in law school. And that's when I started having my first really severe panic attacks. And then I actually practiced law for about 10 years. And in the ninth year, I got so depressed that I just couldn't function. I mean, I just couldn't function. I was showing up at work and um, I think people there knew, but this was the mid 90s and people didn't really talk about it. It wasn't as mainstream as it is now, or I mean, it's not mainstream, but I mean, people just didn't talk about it. And I wound up suicidal and wound up gratefully in the psych ward as opposed to dead because that would have possibly happened and got really good mental health because I'm privileged. I'm white, obviously, but I was a partner in a law firm and I had this amazing kind of mental health package, insurance package, and all this kind of stuff. And so I was able to get care that a lot of people don't get. And I've sort of had struggles on and off for many years. I always wanted to write. I've gone in and out of various diagnoses. The one that finally stuck, which didn't happen until I think it was like 2004, 2005, was bipolar 2. So that's kind of my official diagnosis. That with suicidal ideation, bipolar 2, anxiety, all of that. And yeah, and I always wanted to write. I always wanted to write. I did most of what I did when I practiced law was writing and research, and that's what I loved best. And I couldn't get a book published. I couldn't get a book finished. I couldn't get, I'd get a few magazine articles published and then I'd go through another depressive episode and I would write a draft of a book, maybe edit it some. I tried to, pitch one book and as soon as the rejection started rolling in, I couldn't handle it. I couldn't handle the stress of that. And finally in 2010, I think that's right. I was I think I was 49. I saw a social media post from a friend that said, "Call me crazy, but this running is getting to be fun." And I thought that was possibly the most ridiculous thing I'd ever heard. The words run and fun did not belong in the same sentence in my mind at all. And mind you, I had therapy, I'd been in group therapy, like I said, I'd been hospitalized, I had medication. I also learned to meditate when I met my husband. That's kind of a funny story. I'll share it quick. But we were barely just started dating, and he was at my house for dinner. And after dinner, he said, "Hey, do you want to sit?" And I said, "Do you want to what?" I was like, I didn't know what he was talking about. And what he meant was, "Do you want to meditate?" And so my very first meditation instructions were from this guy I had just, you know, been on like 3 dates with. And he said, "I'm going to set the microwave timer for 5 minutes. Do your best to notice your breath and try not to fidget." And that was it. That was the whole thing. And I was like, "What?" And so all this time I had been meditating, we had gone to retreats, and it really helped. It really, really, really did help. But I still had these horrible bouts of depression, crippling imposter syndrome, anxiety, panic attacks, especially around bridges. And so my high school friend, was about the same age, about the same size, as equally not athletic as me, and I watched her, and she seemed to be having fun. And so after a few months passed, I checked it out, and I leashed up the little dog, or not little, but our dog, Morgan, and went down into this hidden ravine and jogged for 60 seconds. That's what the training plan that she was using said. It said 60 seconds of jogging. And I swear, if it had said a minute or if it had said running, I wouldn't have done it. But something about 60 seconds of jogging sounded doable. And then from there, different things happened, which I'm not going to go into the whole thing, but
Hmm.
that's my first book. And I eventually was able to get that first book published. And it's essentially a story of me taking up running at middle age and how it helped my mental health and also kind of the accomplishment of running at that age, at my size. I was a bit larger than I am now. And, just that sense of accomplishment. And yeah, so that book is called Depression Hates a Moving Target, which is it's true. I had been saying that phrase for years before the publisher wanted a title, and that was the one. That was it. So yeah, and then from there, I wish I could say, oh, then it's all wonderful and magical and unicorns and rainbows. But I had to then figure out the next book and then the next book. And luckily, I had a really good supportive editor, Brenda Knight, who's now all my books are now my first three are with a company called Books That Save Lives, which I love that imprint. That's their imprint. And that's how it felt working with her, was it just felt like she was, really kind of pushing me along, helping me stretch. But the biggest thing about running that has helped was it did things that therapy, meditation, writing as a practice, the other things didn't do. It like rounded out I call it a trifecta of mind, body and spirit. It's like the meditation keeps me in the moment and helps me manage the anxiety that way. Writing as a practice is another form of meditation. And then all the medical stuff, I have that too, but I didn't have a movement form. So I wasn't really tending to my body in the way that I could. And I swear that if I hadn't been running and done some of the long distance stuff that I did, that I wouldn't have the stamina to have finished that first book, because I had tried. I don't know how many first drafts of books I've got, and I could never get it finished, polished, have the focus and concentration, the stamina to get it published. And yeah, and that's what it took. And so now I'm still writing books, and I'm working on my fifth book, hopefully come out next year. We'll see. But they're different. The first book is a pure memoir with it has a little kind of a how-to at the end. The second book is a writing journal, so it's blank pages with author quotes. The third book, Make Every Movement Meditation, is a how-to about how to meditate while you're moving. And then the fourth book is also meditation, called A Daily Dose of Now, and it's about mindfulness practice. It's like a daily reader, so every day you have a
Okay.
little daily practice, do this, just real tiny little, pinprick of do this to try to help you incorporate mindfulness in your day. But they're all memoir. Almost all the examples, maybe not all of them, but most of the examples are me doing something in my life to show you how I do this thing. And they all have the mental health component. They're all about how I use these tools to manage the symptoms of mental illness, which I have. I have, chronic depression, anxiety, suicidal ideation, and bipolar disorder. Probably a few other things thrown in there that aren't diagnosed either, and that's okay. I don't care. The
Hmm.
labels, the
Yeah.
labels don't mean anything. I mean, they mean something to me because they help the professionals know what to do, but there's so much overlap and so much, fluidity that I'm
Yeah.
not totally sure. So I'm going to breathe and let Travis talk now.
No, you're good. Thank you for all that. And it's
Thank
and it's
you.
like you don't want to be known by your labels though. Like you said, it's a good thing for the doctors to know how to help you out and assist you. But like when it comes back to, because I suffer from bad depression, I've had some suicidal ideation. Um, I've called a hotline, but I didn't quite end up going to a psych ward or anything. But I mean, I was to the point where I had plans on what I was going to do, how I was going to do it. There was never a when. I've had problems with like dissociating and completely not remembering what I'm doing in that moment. When I get that way, I'll wander off or I'll, you know, go fall asleep in a car or something, like something just weird that I wouldn't normally do. But and then anxiety, like it's it's either like I'm really dealing with this super anxious mind or this dark, deep, depressed state. And it's like, and speaking of that, I do have a question. When you're, which one, like when you're, say, you know, you're feeling anxious or depressed, which one do you feel is easier for you to come out of? Is there,
That's a good question. Because I meditate, I think the anxiety is easier for me to come out of because I can bring my mind back to the moment and realize that most of what I'm anxious about is not currently happening. And so I have that. I've trained my mind. I mean, it's really a skill, like almost like a muscle. I've trained my mind and I can pretty much, bring back to whatever the sensations are right here. Right now, I'm looking at Travis. I'm seeing his face on the screen. My behind is in a chair. I'm in this room, very concrete details that I can bring my mind back to physical sensations, my breath. Sometimes my breath makes me anxious though. So I'm better off with like, maybe the feeling of my hands or my body in the chair, my feet on the floor, something like that. And that's easier. Where the depression, now I'm better because I realize that by moving, I can create energy. It sounds backwards because at the moment it's happening or when it's happening, I often feel as if I have lead in my arms and legs, like somebody has just filled my limbs with lead and I can't move them, or I'm walking through pudding. That's kind of like a viscous substance of some type that it's pushing against me. But I have enough experience with it now that after a while, I realize you just need to walk. You just need to get up. If you're in bed, just get up and walk around the living room once or twice. Just that. And it's just this little thing. But that, for some reason, is harder for me to remember than when I'm having the anxiety. Just get in the moment, just get in the moment. That one, for some reason, I think it's because I've meditated a lot longer than I've, moved,
yeah,
in a intentional way. Um, but yeah, those are kind of the fixes I do. But yeah, I would say the anxiety is a little bit easier. I mean, I'm gonna talk about this because it's true. I am through menopause now, and I truly believe women perimenopause and when you're going through the perimenopause and menopause, it was like my anxiety went on steroids. It ratcheted up so high, and the, medical provider I was seeing at the time really did not want anybody really to be on hormone replacement, and now there's new research that it's not necessarily as tied to all the bad things they used to think. And so I really think a tiny dose of some kind of hormone, replacement therapy might have really helped because it was just awful for years. And now it's like it didn't go away, but it's so much better. And nothing else changed, really. I mean, I had the meditation. I wasn't moving yet then, but I went through that before, and that was all
yeah,
before then. So I just want to say, make sure you're asking your doctor. I don't know. I'm not sure about the testosterone thing with men. I don't know anything about that. I just know the women's hormones. But women, please ask twice about that. If you're in perimenopause or the early phases of menopause and you're having anxiety, like jump out of your skin anxiety kind of thing. That's what I had. I couldn't. Just it was driving was just horrible. And I mean, I did a lot of things to make it easier. I did a lot of things to desensitize myself, and so I was able to drive. It was mainly on freeways and over bridges, but, I got through it. But I think that if I'd had other kinds of medication support, um, it might have been easier. So I just wish I wish I'd pushed back a little more or that it had been 10 years later, because now they realize, "Wait a minute, those studies, they're looking at them again, and they're not quite
yeah,
as" you know, so, yeah.
yeah. And you did bring up important point because I feel like the anxiety in women when they're going through that stuff, like it's not talked about enough. Like,
No, yeah. It's like it's shamed or something, I
huh?
don't know, there's the whole thing, it's just, they want us to tough it out, and that just makes me crazy. Um, but, um but yeah, yeah, it's not talked about, so let's talk about it ladies, I will definitely talk to you about it.
And like going back to what you said previously, like the anxiety, it's the same for me. Anxiety, I've trained myself like as my you go to therapy and my therapist basically taught me how to rewire my brain and you know make old habits disappear. But one of the things that he really taught me was like, your anxiety is just thoughts. It's just like bad thoughts. And he's like, you need to pretend that there's a stream right next to you, it's floating by, it's going pretty quick, and get those thoughts and just tear them out of your head and throw them away. Watch them float down the river.
Watch them float down the river. Oh, I love that. I love that.
So since I've been able to, I mean, it took me a bit of time to learn how to, subconsciously like sit and think about like, because sometimes like I'd be doing something, I'd be really anxious and I'd have to stop and think, like stop what I was doing. But okay, I'm feeling anxious. What do I do? Now I could do it without like anybody noticing. Before my wife would be like, okay, what are you doing? Why are you like
Yeah. What is
standing?
this about?
Why
Right,
are
right,
you standing in the middle of the room?
right,
Like you're
right. Well,
putting the
I'm
kids to
trying to.
bed. And
Mm,
so now my anxiety is really easy. But once I get one of those deep, dark ruts like of depression, I'm like,
yeah,
it's, I went through like
that's hard.
a month episode where I just could not do it. And finally, like that was just recently. So I'm finally, I think, towards the end of that. It's been about 2 months, and my therapist did help with a few things, but I'm just glad that I find somebody that else that, they say anxiety is that easy one to push, but it's all, I
Yeah.
feel like with mental health in general, it's all like a learning curve.
Oh, completely. And I feel so bad for people who don't know that, who think that they're doing something wrong because they can't fix it, or they're doing something, because they feel the way they do
Hmm.
that they're doing something wrong. And no, it's you have a disease and it's,
Yeah.
that's the symptom. These are the symptoms of your disease. If you had the flu or a fever, you wouldn't expect yourself to be able to dance on the table. But somehow with depression and anxiety, we think, or any mental health, dissociation. I don't have dissociation so much, but I have auditory hallucinations sometimes where I hear music that isn't there, and also olfactory ones where I'll smell things that aren't there. And yeah, those are the symptoms of my disease. But I coach a few people. I'm not a therapist, but I coach a few people, and that's what we talk about is just trying to normalize this so that we don't add this extra burden to ourselves by shaming ourselves for having this stuff because we didn't do anything wrong to get it. So we don't need that extra layer on
Hmm.
top of it. So we work with that first, trying to kind of normalize what's actually happening so that then we can access the tools because so much of what gets in the road is the way we think about ourselves or the way we think about mental illness or these, whatever you want to call it, these things we live with that, you know,
Yeah.
challenge us.
Very, very well said. So, and I want to go kind of move towards your bipolar diagnosis. Before you had that diagnosis, what were some of the biggest misconceptions you had about bipolar, like being
Well,
bipolar?
I think I was only familiar with bipolar 1, with
Yeah.
the mania where are up 3 or 4 days or weeks or whatever, and you get so much done and you're so productive and you're high and you're happy, and so that was sort of the stereotype that I had about it. And my bipolar 2 primarily manifests as depression. So that's mostly what we see. And so it took my psychiatrist a long time to realize that, that it wasn't just the depression. And we started talking about there's this one episode where back when I was practicing law, I flew to Chicago and maxed out my credit cards buying lawyery clothes. And then I flew home and realized that I wasn't going to be able to pay for that. And so I flew back and returned them. And all in a period of very short period of time. And when I don't know how that came up, and it had been years before. I mean, that would have been maybe 10 years before. I was having this conversation with my psychiatrist, and I'm not sure how that came up, but she stopped and she went, "Wait a minute." I could sort of see the wheels going in her head. She was, "Hold on just a minute." And, and s I'd had trouble. It wasn't I don't think they would call it treatment-resistant depression, but the meds would stop working very quickly. And so I had been on a ton of different meds. At one point, I was on 6 different meds. That was the other thing I wanted to say about running is I was able to reduce. I'm still on medication, but I was
Yeah.
able to reduce, not even intentionally. I just ended up having the side effects of being on too many meds. And they realized, "Oh my gosh, the running is,
It's
giving her
doing
the
something. Yeah.
endocannabinoids or whatever she needs, and so we're gonna crank this down." And, but I was on all these meds and they would work, but just not quite. And finally, once she realized that I was bipolar 2, she put me on a mood stabilizer in addition to I think I was on an antidepressant too. It doesn't really matter, let the psychiatrist figure that out. I'm not gonna tell you what to take. But she put me on she changed my med routine, and that really helped because I think what was happening was I was still depressed, but then I would get these mixed states where you're depressed, but you have energy, and that is very dangerous when you're really depressed, but you actually have energy, and that's when I would get, um, the anxiety and the suicidal ideation and all of that. So yeah, it was just that it was kind of a fluke in a way, and she sort of apologized, but she said, "We just never talked about anything that sounded like this." And I think when I had my hypomania, I actually looked kind of normal because I had enough energy to do some stuff, and I would bathe, and I would all the things that
Yeah.
do something, um, when you're in a depressive episode. I think that was just a challenge for her. I adore her. She's a great psychiatrist, and I've been her patient for many, many years now. But once she figured that out, I think I'd only been seeing her about a year before we really figured that out. And then that really changed things. And then when I took up running, that changed things again. So those were probably the two big, like the sort of three big times in my medication and therapy journey. And the first was when I was diagnosed originally, when I actually went on meds the first time. And then the second time was once she figured it was a different psychiatrist figured out I was a bipolar. And then it's probably a couple years after I started running, I just started having all these crazy side effects. And she said, "These are the side effects of somebody who's on too much meds. Let's drop you off things." Oops, sorry about that. Drop you off things and see what happens. And so she added back a little tiny bit of, one med, and so far so good.
That's really cool though that you were able to like see a decrease in medication because you
Yeah.
were running.
Yeah, yeah. And I had a health issue a couple years ago, and I had to stop running for a little while, and, I was really scared because I was really afraid that that the depression would come back, that I have to go back on all the meds,
Hmm.
but I didn't. I was able to keep doing other kinds of movement enough to get, benefit enough, I think, that I just didn't have the symptoms, so we didn't have to adjust anything. I started seeing her a lot more often when that was happening because she was really afraid I was
Yeah.
gonna kinda fall off a cliff because I could, because that's the only thing they could explain it. So, yeah.
And I feel like to get a diagnosis with like, I'm not even talking just mental health, but I think in just physical health and mental health in general, like seems to a lot of times, unless it's like, like straight up like a problem with your kidneys, like there's so many factors that play a role and so many things that overlap that it can be very difficult.
Yeah, and that's why they go to school all those years and why
Yes.
the I don't know if you call it nephrologist, but, like, the doctors that it's not just the doctors that do the tests, but the doctors that analyze what all those tests
Hmm.
mean. I can I'm pretty smart. Have, like, 3 degrees, I'm not
Yeah.
exactly, but I get the test results on my chart before the doctor sees them, and, I'm Googling 'em, and I'm reading it, I'm thinking,
Yeah.
"Oh my god,
Yeah.
I'm dying. Oh my god, this test result means I've got this thing," and then that doctor eats my and, "Well, actually, Nita, the test result means you don't have the thing." Like, how does that even
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
just like, "How did I get it
you
backwards?"
you
But I have
start playing doctor to yourself.
oh,
Yeah.
no, it's terrible. Yeah, that's what that my fr I have this one friend that I text with a lot. We both have had a number of health issues, and we always say to each other, "Nita, Doctor Google is not your friend. Doctor Google is not your friend."
Yeah.
Dear.
I've had neurological issues since in my early 20s. I have a seizure disorder, and
Wow.
I remember when, like, all these symptoms first started happening and I started having seizures and Googling, it's like, "Oh, it's gotta be brain tumor, it's gotta be this."
Yeah,
And it's
absolutely.
and it's like, but then when it comes to, I always had doctors tell me, he's like, you know what? You're at a point where you're probably better off not being diagnosed with anything, because if you're diagnosed with something, it's not necessarily going to be good.
Yeah, yep. So, yeah,
But
that's
I like how you put it, Dr. Google.
oh, yeah, it's bad, it's bad, and I can't help myself. I mean, I know better. Oh my gosh, I know better. I've been burned so many times, and yet
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Gratefully, again, I have an amazing doctor. He happens to be a runner too, which is wonderful, but he understands that I have medical anxiety in addition to, garden variety
Yeah.
anxiety, and so he tries to get my test results reviewed. When he knows that he's ordered some kind of blood test or something, he tries to get on it right away so that keeps me out of the medical anxiety. Otherwise he's
Hmm.
going to get a couple too many messages from me. So I read the test. Oh, what is it? And I mean, I still have that, and I can bring myself back at the present, and I still have that. So yeah, it's a thing. But I
Yeah.
think I'm really fortunate because I've had some really crappy. I mean, I had one psychiatrist that was just horrible, and I, gratefully found this other one because, it's not always easy to find ones that are on your plan or that, oh my gosh. I don't wanna get started on the healthcare system, don't even start me. Um, but had to have a primary care physician who understands, who doesn't write hypochondria in red letters on the top of your chart or something like that, but who gets it, who knows that I do have that, and I'm always gonna jump to the most horrible, ridiculous conclusion. And, there may come a day when it is that. It could be that someday, but right now it's not, and, you know,
And I feel like
unfortunately.
you know your body better than like anybody. So I
Yeah.
do feel like you have to doctor shop to find that person who's right for you.
Well, and who can see your personality too, because
Yeah,
some
exactly.
people don't some people like doctors who are just the facts, they just
Yeah.
want the specific information. I need one who's a little bit chatty, who's in fact, I had an
Yeah.
amazing cardiologist. He's wonderful. Dr. Sabgir for the other health issue I had. He started the Walk with a Doc program, which is an international program where every Saturday they have different chapters around the world of you go and for a walk with a doctor, and they teach you different things. And he started that program. He's amazing. And he's a very one sentence kind of guy. And I would go in, I knew he was completely right, and I'd leave completely freaked out. And so I had a very lovely conversation with him, and I got referred to a woman who's just a little more chatty, and, that's what I needed. And I I tell people to go to him all the time because he's really, really good.
Hmm.
He was just his personality and mine just didn't mesh because of my medical anxiety. That's not
Yeah.
anything. He's a great guy. I'm getting started this fantastic program. Um, I probably shouldn't have said his name, but I wanted to say about the walk with a doc, and it's obvious that it's him. And he writes the funniest emails. He's hysterical in writing. But so I ended up with a different cardiologist who's a renowned colleague of his, and Dr. Albers, and she's wonderful. But it was a tough choice because I knew how good he was, and I knew he was completely right about what he was saying, but it was like I couldn't hear it because of my issues. It wasn't about him at all. And so I think maybe 10 years ago, I wouldn't have done that. I'd probably still be his patient, which probably would be just fine. I might be fine by now. But at that time, I was having this recurring issue, and I was so anxious about it that I just had to find someone else, and that's hard to do because, like, I live in the 14th largest metropolitan area in the United States, so there's more doctors here than there are in other places, maybe where you're at, you're in Utah, so maybe where you're at. I don't know, but I was fortunate to be able to find somebody else and also brave enough to ask, because not all like, Dr. Sabger was great. He was absolutely great. He's like, "I completely understand. Let's help you find somebody else." And not every doctor would be like that. Like the psychiatrist that I talked about, I won't say his name. In fact, I may have even forgotten it by now. He was just aghast that I did not trust him and didn't, wanted to find somebody else. He just was like, "Whatever." And, yeah, so it just really depends on the doctor.
Yeah, for sure. But I'm the same way. I need it spelled out for me, because otherwise, like, there's things that I don't understand, I don't get, and I'm not always one to necessarily ask questions. Sometimes I'll just let it go, let it slide.
Yeah.
but and then I'll think later, I'm like, well, I should have asked this, but whatever. And then I never follow up. But
Yeah.
like I've had to be better at that. But I found a doctor now that like it's like everything's laid out. This is what's working. This is not working. Like you need to do this, and more of the chatty type as well.
Yeah, yeah, I don't need them to we don't need to talk about what they had for lunch,
Yeah,
but I need just a little more about, well, this could happen, that could happen, and so, yeah, it's great. It's good right now. I just am so grateful because I definitely feel my privilege. I mean, I know people who have just struggled to get any kind of care at
yeah,
all because of financial reasons, because of their, employer has crappy insurance or they don't have insurance at all, or, you know, um, so I just feel so fortunate and I just want to say that I acknowledge all of that and, lucky,
yeah,
lucky, lucky lady.
yeah. And it's like I hear people with different health coverage, and like, well, I can't do that type of appointment because I can't afford it because my healthcare doesn't cover it.
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah.
that's too
And they're
bad
talking
because.
the difference. Yeah. Sometimes they're talking the difference between paying their rent and paying their
Hmm.
doctor. And it's like, whoa, whoa. I have not, there was a day when I might have been in that situation. It's been a long time ago, but currently I'm not. And, I do what I can to help others because I know that I'm privileged.
I want to go back to talking about kind of exercising and that type of stuff. So somebody that is struggling with, you know, let's say they're in a deep dark depression and they're struggling with starting to exercise. What advice would you give them?
Just go for a walk. Walking is the most underrated, most valuable thing you can do. And if it means walking up and down your hallway, walking around your living room, just anything. If you can get outside and get some fresh air, that's even better. If you can find other people to walk with, that's even better because with the thing that with me I think I, um, didn't understand how much the kind of fellowship aspect of it would change my life too, when I ended up joining a running group, but it could be I mean, there are walking groups, there are, what did I see? There's hiking groups, there's just all kinds of groups. If you go to Meetup, there's groups everywhere, depending on where you're at, and like I said, the Walk with a Doc program, that's international, look for that, Walk with a Doc, um and it's DOC, like a walk with a doctor, but walk with a doc. But yeah, just some basic gentle stretching. It's like just have to get, I say just because I shouldn't say that word because this is not easy. This is not it took me probably 3 months to actually even open the training plan that my friend was using. And then it took me maybe 6 weeks to actually go out and try the first session. I mean, it was not just anything, so please don't take that the wrong way. But finding a movement that you can do, even if it's a little challenging, and that you enjoy too, because I had tried the, aerobics classes, I had tried yoga. I somehow always injure myself when I do yoga. I think I'm too competitive and I try to, do what the teacher's doing and I break myself. But, finding something that you enjoy and for me, I didn't realize that I needed to be doing it with other people sometimes too. And, um, and now when we meet, my running group meets once a week they meet a couple times, but usually go on Saturdays. Um, it's the highlight of my week, or it's one of the maybe not the highlight, but it's one of the best times of my week. We go and we run and we do run walk, so we're not running the whole time. And then we go to breakfast, And I will tell you that during 2020, my husband had a heart attack. So we're in the middle of pandemic. He has a heart attack. And then he has open heart surgery. He comes off that on a feeding tube. He didn't do well on the ventilator. And I was there, taking care of him on the feeding tube during the pandemic. There were professionals coming in and out, but otherwise we couldn't have anybody in the house. I mean, we had to be uber careful about him with germs. We'd seen plenty of people on ventilators. No, thank you. And I got a text one Saturday morning and I look out it said, "Look out your window. Look out your front window." And I think there were 6 or maybe 8 members of my running group. they had made signs like race signs, like you'd be had a marathon, and they were standing 6 feet apart in our front yard, and they were all signs cheering my husband on. "You can do this, heal it." It was just like, and I never saw that coming. Never saw that. I mean, I signed up because I wanted to run a race. I didn't sign up for best friends, and that's what I got. So when people start
Yeah.
so so when people start, just know that you might need more than you think. I don't know if I'm making it because I know when you're really depressed, it's so overwhelming. Like, "Oh, yeah, Nita, sure." I get that. I get that. There have been days not that long ago where I really wanted to go for a run, knew I would feel better, but I was still in my pajamas, and it was probably 3 in the afternoon. Um, and so I started running around my house, up and down the hallway, just jogging in my pajamas. And pretty soon, it was too hot to keep running in my pajamas, and so next thing I knew, I was in running clothes. Well, hell, if I'm in running clothes, I might as well go outside before I knew I'd gone for a run, but I started in my pajamas, so that's the kinda thing where because I know this works, I I know that I have to get moving, but the mental thing of, "Oh my god, I feel like there's lead in my veins." I have to push against that, and that's the hardest thing is, "But Nita, I just wanna lay down." I understand, so do I. So
It's just you have to like really fight those urges to like go back to sleep or lay back down or it's a struggle.
yeah, and I think for me, though, it's chunking it down into, like, these tiny bite-sized pieces. So if I'm in bed and I'm having trouble getting out of bed, the first thing to do is not get up and move, which is what I just said. The first thing to do is throw off the covers. Just roll over and throw off the covers and lay there for a minute. And then when you kind of get through that, then sit up on the edge of the bed and just sit there for a minute, you know? And then after a few minutes, stand up. I mean, really, just that's how I had to do it. Just chunk it down into these tiny little pieces. Because if this lady I didn't know who writes books and seems to have a magical life told me, well, you should go for a run, I would have, reached through the screen and strangled her. I'm not saying that. I'm saying do exactly what you can. And sometimes that's just throw off the damn part. Sorry, throw off the
Yeah, you're good.
covers.
You're good.
Throw off the covers and just lay there and go, "Okay, well, I'm uncovered now." And then after a while, you go, "Well, I might as well sit up." You know?
Yeah.
At least that's what I was like, "Okay, well, I'm sitting up. I might as well stand up." It's like, "Okay, I'm standing up. I might as well walk somewhere." Just like
Yeah.
but it has to be
It's
these tiny bites because when I'm depressed, my mind is so easily overwhelmed. It's just everything is too much. Everything. Breathing is too much. And, so yeah, that's what I mean when I say go walk around your living room. I mean, throw off the covers. That's what I mean.
one of the things that I find helps me just like in the morning. I used to be I most of the time I work from home and I used to, just keep my blinds down all day, not let the sunlight in, and that just makes it worse. So now I
Yeah,
like
it does.
there's days I still get bad migraines, so if I have a migraine, I'm like, "Okay, I don't want to let the light in." But most days now, like, first thing I do is go and open the blinds just to get some natural light, and
I
that's
make my bed every day too, which is never people used to talk about that, and I think, "Oh, that's so stupid. Why? You just gotta get back in it," you know? But there's something about that act of making my bed, it feels like self-care.
mhm,
It feels like, I'm when we get in bed, there'll be like a nice bed to get into because it's all made up, and I'm not talking tucking everything in, I'm talking just pull the covers up and
yeah.
smooth them out. Just the least amount of stuff I can do.
Like you said, it's the little things.
Yeah, it's these little and that's all I can do when I'm in a depression. That's all I got. That's all the energy I've got.
So, I have another question here for you. How can mindfulness and meditation look different for people who struggle with, like, sitting still, or find traditional meditation overwhelming?
That's part of why I wrote the book It's called Make Every Move a Meditation because you don't actually have to sit still to meditate. Sitting is a posture, and you can meditate in literally any posture, including moving. It's sometimes harder to develop concentration if you're not sitting, but you can do it. And so at retreats, they have periods of slow walking or sometimes fast walking where you're meditating. And so what you do, the steps are actually the same, you're just choosing a different posture. So you pick a period of time, or, when I'm running, I pick a distance usually, maybe, and it can be from this driveway to the next driveway, or from this tree to that tree, or a period of time. And the reason I do that is because then my mind thinks, "Oh, we'll be done soon. I don't have to do this forever," because my mind is
Hmm.
still I've been meditating 30 years, my mind is still like, "Oh my god, we have to do this one for an hour? No way." Um, so you pick the time or the interval, and then you choose an object of meditation, and that can be any of your senses. You can also use your thoughts, but that's a little tricky, so that's like PhD level, don't do that. So it can be sometimes when I'm running, I use the color green because it's so green here most of the year. In the winter, I'll use like gray or white and just notice anytime I see the color green. So you can go for a walk or you can walk slowly or just any kind of, you can jog, whatever, but pick a color or pick a shape even, everything's circular. Say anything circular. I say anything circular. And then your mind will wander. And again, let me just back up about the object of meditation. You can use in a spring, I'll use the lilacs, scent of lilacs. We will have a lot of lilac scent, and I'll notice, yes, there's lilacs present. No, there's no lilacs. Yes, lilacs, no, and that's it. You can use taste, like eating meditation. You can use the texture and taste of food. You can use sound. Sometimes I'll do hearing meditation where I'll listen to bird song, especially if we run early in the morning. Sometimes there's a lot of bird song. You can also use touch, and that's why the breath is actually a touch sensation. So those are kind of the five. You can use any of the five senses. But you pick one. You just choose one. Doesn't matter which one it is. You just pick one, and then you start yourself moving, and you do your best to keep your mind on whatever you've chosen. So let's say I've chosen the color green. I'm going to go for 3 driveways, color green. I get halfway to the first driveway and I'm already thinking about what we're going to have for breakfast after the run, or, what I am supposed to be writing tomorrow, or the podcast I'm going to be on with Travis next week, or whatever. And then I go, wait. So that the fourth thing is remembering. Oh, wait, I'm supposed to be meditating. And then the fifth thing, which is really important, is I very gently, without reproach, bring my mind back to whatever it is I've chosen, which the color green. Oh, there's some green. Okay. And I go back to that. And then I get another half a driveway and I'm thinking about something else. And I go, oh, wait a minute. And that's what it is. Meditation is basically 90% forgetting that you're meditating and then remembering, oh, yeah. And then very gently bringing your mind back. And then you just do that until the interval or period is done and you're done. And if you have questions, you find a teacher or someone, a coach like me, to answer your questions. But that's really it. You just choose something, choose a time, get moving, forget you're meditating, remember you're meditating, and go, oh, wait a minute, here we go. And then you just do that over and over until the time's off.
That's
And then eventually what'll happen is you'll the muscle of focus, and you realize the periods that you're forgetting are shorter and shorter, and the periods of time where you're actually either seeing or hearing or smelling or tasting or touching the thing become longer and longer. But it's not by force. It's like a natural process. It's not like, I mean, it's funny because they in Zen, always like, oh, the ring's eye kind of that kind of thing.
hmm
But they're not making it either. You just very gently bring it back. And that's the process. So I hope that made sense. But
no, it
I wrote a
totally
whole book
makes
about
sense.
it.
That's that's really cool because I've always thought as of meditation as something that you somewhat have to sit still for, and
Nope.
that's really cool. That like gave me a totally complete like new understanding of it because it's like
Good. Hey, my
so
work
so
here's
thank
done.
you.
Yay.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I
You're
learned
welcome.
something.
Hey. Yay. That's
So
great.
you've done some coaching work as well. Obviously, without breaking like any HIPAA laws, could you share a success story of coaching someone that really moved you?
Wow. I think The biggest one is a person who was really, really they had a very important to them story to tell, and they were so stuck, they just couldn't get to the page, and we were able to get them to the page, and they ended up self-publishing the book, but they actually got their story out there into the world, and it was just the book isn't gonna make some huge splash or anything,
Yeah.
but it was such an important story, and I won't tell because I don't wanna give away, but, um, especially to them, it was so powerful that I saw that it's not about the book. It's about the transformation of the person when they do something that has terrified them, when they overcome their fear and accomplish this thing that they thought was impossible. And that was just because I've helped a lot of people write stuff. I mean, that's kind
Yeah.
of, I do a lot of different kind of coaching, but that's the one that the people tend to come back for. But this person was just so frozen that frankly, I wasn't sure we were going to make it. It's like, I don't know, we just do our best. And so that I think is probably the most powerful thing. Yeah.
That's really cool. And it's like those things, like they're the types of things that keep you going.
Yeah, they really do. It's just seeing people grow even in the tiniest ways. I've had people who've had difficult health diagnoses. I've had people who wanted to, run crazy races that they weren't sure they could do. I've had different types of leaders, like executive people who essentially weren't sure if they could stay in their career, and some of them chose not to, and some of 'em figured out how to do it, and, because I've been coaching a long time, I don't do a lot of I never have a lot of clients at the same time because
Yeah.
I can't do it. I still have my own mental health challenges, and I'm wanna write my own books, so I only have maybe 3 or 4 clients at a time, but, um but yeah, it's so when it clicks, man, it makes me high.
Yeah. I'm sure it does.
Yeah.
It's really cool. So if you've honestly answered the majority of my questions without even me answering, like asking them, but
Good.
it's really, it's like you're reading my mind or something.
Oh my wow, I apparently wanna talk about what you wanna hear, so that's good. That's we knew it'd be a good I mean, when I first contacted you and I said, "Let's talk about possibly doing this," I just thought this is gonna be a good match because I just feel like we just have the same audience, and that
Yeah,
makes it
and you
beautiful.
said some good vibes. So, but
Yeah.
so I just
Yeah,
have a
absolutely.
few more things here. If someone listening today is struggling to find hope, what would you want them to hear from you?
But the thing I always say is stay because it will change. It will get different. In the next second, it will be different. And that's what we tend to think it's frozen and that I'm gonna feel this bad forever. But it's actually changing right now. So, I just urge people to stay because it changes. It just changes. And if we can, you kind of can see that in hindsight. It's hard to see it when you're in the moment. But, and that, people always say reach out for help. Man, when you're so depressed, sometimes it's really tough. But just hang on to whatever you are right now, hang on here right now, and it will change. It absolutely will change. That's the only constant is change. Things just do not ever stay the same.
Yeah,
So that's what I always say is just please stay. We need you. First off, we don't, you may not think we need you, but we do. And it's going to change. It's going to get different. I promise.
yeah, and it's like I always go by this thing. It's if I can just have that, little mustard seed of faith or hope,
Yeah.
like that's all I need to hold on to.
Yeah. And so that's the thing when you're in a not crisis place, figure out the mustard seed then,
Hmm.
you know, because you need it. You're going to need it when, you know, the crap, what is the fertilizer hits the ventilator
Yep.
again. You're going to need it then. Um, um, So that's one of the tools I work with people sometimes is trying to find something that they can hold on to when it gets bad again. And it's hard because people don't want to think that it might get bad again. It won't be the same, but you're going to have ups and downs. We just do. It's not linear. You may have progress, but it's like this. It's
Hmm.
not a linear diagonal up. There's that
For
little
sure.
backslides.
So Nita, what is next for you? Like what do you have
Oh,
planned?
well, I'm hoping that the next book will come out next year. It is another memoir, really pure, pure, pure memoir, um, about my relationship with my father, and it coincided with my, uh, worst mental health crisis. So he was diagnosed with terminal cancer 6 months after I got out of the psych ward. And I had a lot of time on my hands because I wasn't practicing law, and all he wanted to do was play golf. And so we played golf until he couldn't, and then, so it's about discovering a way through my mental health issues while learning about him and learning to let him go because he had terminal lung cancer. Yeah, and then it's a lot of my backstory too. It's, I kinda have to tell the whole story. It's a big project that I've been working on for many years. It has lots of moving parts, and so it's been a real challenge, and I couldn't do it before now. I tried, and now it's starting to come together, so we'll see. So it's called Memorial. We'll see, if that title sticks. Right now, that's the working title, Memorial, and, yeah.
That's
That's it. I have coaching and I have marketing of the books and all that kind of stuff, but that's the big thing is I'm very focused on trying to get that book out into the world.
that's
That
great. And then
baby.
you actually made me think of one more question here. In your writing, do you find it like challenging to write about some of these things, or is it more therapeutic?
Okay, so at first it's therapeutic and then it gets challenging because I have to realize that I'm not the only one who care. I have to make other people care about it. And so that's the challenging part sometimes is wait a minute, I have to step back and somehow see if this is universal. Is there
Yeah.
a universal theme here that anybody else besides me would care about, or my dog and my husband maybe, um, maybe my sister and brother, and that's kind of the hard part. And then also the structure is often very tough. But at some point, it becomes because I'm working so much with the craft elements, the
Yeah.
structure, and the way you say things. It's almost like it's not my story anymore.
Okay.
It's because you have to I'm in this kind of technical weeds place where it's almost like they're not real people. Um, and then every once in a while, I'll read something and it'll go, "Ugh, oh, wait, that really happened. I remember that," and they'll be like
Yeah.
this, because you have to be in it, but yet you also have to take a step back sometimes. So yeah, it's both. It's all, there are days when I'm crying in my office and, I can do probably about 3 hours on a day of it, and then I'm just done. And that's both because it's emotional, but also, um, because the focus is just that you need, especially when it's like a huge project. We're talking like 90,000 words is all these pieces of 31 chapters is all this, moving stuff around um, and, uh, there's probably a more efficient way to do it, and I've tried every other way and this is just what works for me, so somebody else might be much more efficient, and it would be less painful for them, I don't know. This is my process, I'm book 5, so we'll see.
That's great. Like that totally makes sense. I'm sure there's
Thanks.
so many ways to like dive in and like write in different ways you
Yeah,
can do
I
it.
mean,
It's
you go to a conference and you'll hear 10 different people say that this is the way, and it's like, no, there is no one way, there's only your way, and,
exactly
I've tried a bunch of different ways, and the other thing is that what worked for the book before won't necessarily work for this
for
book
this. Yeah.
either. It's like you have to learn how to write all over again. It's kind of crazy. Mm.
So this is kind of just a general question that I tend to ask pretty much everybody that comes on the show. When it comes to mental health, what do you feel is the biggest stigma?
Oh, wow. There's so many. I think that we're lazy. I think that's the one that, like like if we just tried harder, we'd be fine. That's the one that just gets me again and again. It's like this is not. Yeah, no, we're not lazy. We're either confused or we're exhausted or we're in the wrong place or, like with jobs, it might be bad job fit. There's all kinds of reasons that you aren't doing your quote potential. But yeah, when I hear people talk about, oh, they're just lazy, I just want to scream, scream.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
right there with you. It's like
Yeah,
you
there's
want
about
to.
100 I could go, but that's the one that popped in my head. That's the one
Yes,
that's like a hot button for me. So,
you're lazy. It's just a phase in life. You can get over it. Just it's
yeah,
like
you get through it. Oh,
it's like obviously you've never had to deal with
exactly.
anything past a bad hair day.
Yeah. Or they have, and it wasn't chronic. It was
Hmm.
acute. Because there's a very big difference between having an acute episode and then getting well. And someone like me, which I think you have it too, Travis, who's chronic. I have a chronic condition. This is not, I mean, it gets better. I have better days and I'm much better and much more able and, to do things than I was, let's say 10 years ago or 15 years ago. But it's not going to go away. I'm not going to wake up someday and not have bipolar 2 and not have these episodes. And, it's chronic. So,
You find the workaround. You find, like you said, you've discussed all of them. The tools that you use to get through the day by day.
yeah, I find the workaround and I've had the resources to find the workaround
Yes,
too. Because
exactly.
I am not here to judge anybody who cannot do any of the things I'm saying. Because some people just can't. You just can't. You can't function and you're not getting the help you need. So, that's the truth about what the world we live in right now.
I totally agree. So, where can people find you and your stuff?
The best place is my website, nitasweeney.com. And there's a free little book thing called 3 Tools for Happier, Healthier Mind. And when you get that, you end up on my email list, which you can either stay on or unsubscribe from. Um, and I try to keep that updated. I have a blog and stuff like that, but that's the best place is get on my newsletter and you'll hear from me maybe once a month. Maybe not that often. I try to send an email newsletter often enough that people don't forget who I am, but I don't flood people's inboxes. I do send a few more emails. Like if I have a book coming out, I try to send a few more emails because they fall through the cracks. Even email will fall through the cracks sometimes when people go, "I didn't know you had another book out." Yeah, I do. I do. So yeah, that's it. nitasweeney.com. Thank you for
Awesome.
asking that.
Perfect. Yep. And last thing here is we've discussed a lot of topics tonight. Is there anything that you'd like to bring up that we did not discuss?
Mm, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches.
To bring that on, right?
We need to bring that on. Yeah. I was in was it I in group? It was either when I was in the psych ward or I was in a group for they wouldn't let me out of group for almost 3 years. I was bad. And at one point in some of that place, we had to make a list of everything we would do kind of in lieu of attempting suicide. And that was the last thing on my list was I would make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and eat it. And when I run races, the longer kind of races, I will make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and cut off the crusts and cut it into little tiny pieces and put that in a Ziploc bag and carry that with me and eat those
Share it
little
with you.
pieces as I go on. Yeah. So I'm a big peanut butter and jelly fan.
I used to.
Sorry, I just
No, you're good. I
random.
used to. I used to down. The frozen. Um, they're called Uncrustables, and remember
Yeah, yeah, Uncrustables.
downing
Yeah.
those. Yeah, but then, yep, I changed my diet, and I don't eat a lot of foods that I used to eat. But
Yeah,
I
yeah. That's
remember.
yeah. Yeah, I go with the whole grain bread and actually, that's not true though. In races, I usually eat white bread, which I never eat because it's easier to digest when if
Okay.
you're running, it's easier to digest that. But yeah, usually I go with the whole grain. If I'm going to eat bread, I don't eat a lot of bread, but yeah. But yeah, Uncrustables, see, I wasn't in that generation, but yeah, I would have definitely inhaled those. Yeah, no,
Oh yeah, they're super good. Nita, thank you so
thank
much
you.
for spending some time with me and telling me your story. I admire all the stuff that I admire you. I should rephrase that. I admire you for everything that you've had to overcome. And I know that you have a great story to share and um, keep pushing, keep pushing through the
Oh,
hard. Thank
well,
you so
thank you
much.
so much, Travis. I just want to say thank you for your podcast too, because this is so important. Whenever I see anybody doing a mental health anything, I'm just so grateful and happy because there's just so many people out there that are suffering. And if we can touch them and keep them on the planet till they get some help, that's the key.
Yeah, it is a key, and I think a big part of it in this this podcast does it is making people that feel alone know that they're not alone. They're not the only
No,
ones that are going through this stuff.
not at all. Yep, that's great.
Thank you to all those that have listened. Take some time to review us, and you can find us on all major podcast platforms. Thanks again. Until next time.